I missed it because I had a voicemail message. You're literally paying someone to be honest. Yeah, you're paying someone to be honest to you. That's why you can't rely on your friends just because, well,
thank you so much. Oh, this is embarrassing.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Deb. That is my real name. I'm known as the King Streak, which is just funny because I made it up one year and everyone goes, that's really pretentious. It fucking is. I've been doing this workshop for about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. But the idea was that when I started it, that it would be, come on in, grab a seat here, or that I would run them down and make them a very small, intimate group after a while. That hasn't happened yet, which is also fucking awesome. I am a psychotherapist. That is what I do for a living. Counsellor as well. They are different. They're different qualifications. I've also had over like 500-600 hours of my own therapy as well. But that's who I am. I also happen to have been submissive, and I've switched a lot for the last 40 years. You know, I look around the room and I go, oh shit, I was meant before you were born. Hiya, come on in. I think there are separate chairs unless you want to try and grab a couple or something. Sorry. Make yourselves comfy. So I'm also submissive and I've switched for a lot of that as well. Yeah, a long time. I started when I was 17, I'm 57 now. And I've seen a lot of changes over that time. And one of the things about 7 or 8 years ago that I realised was that nobody really talks, they weren't then, about our mental health in kink. And nobody was talking about how to do kink well. Not right, not wrong, but well for you. And to do it healthily for you. So that was the idea of these workshops. That's why they came up in the first place. I say this every time, so I'm really boring. Who's never met me before? Okay, who's seen me here before? Quite a few. Thanks. So I say every time, these are Q&A sessions. I fucking never know what's going to come up, right? It's down to you. It can be anything to do with psychology. She says, watch me fail and burn. It can be anything to do with mental health. It can be anything to do with kink. It can be anything to do with polyamory, anything to do with relationships, anything to do with anything. Do you want to come on in? Yeah. Yeah, please do. There's a chair there and there's 2 chairs there. So it can be anything to do with relationships, with communication, all these sorts of things. So there's lots of options that we can talk about. And often what happens is everyone's a bit nervous about putting their hand up and doesn't really want to ask a question. And then we get towards the end where your bums are aching and you're like, fucking hell, it's too hot in here and my arse hurts. And everybody wants to ask a question, maybe because you just want to get out. You can, look, if it's too much for you, anything I'm saying, leave. It's not a problem. I won't take it personally much. I'll just remember your face. And just go, Right. We all judge. Let's get over it. So you can leave. That's not a problem. I might come up and ask, why did you leave me? I haven't got problems, obviously. But so you are that proud. And so and so you can go. It's, you know, like if you're not happy or it's too long for you, because it's 90 minutes. It's a fucking long time, and they are very hard chairs. And I've lost 2 stone recently. Why can I feel my arse bones more? Fucking, it's so uncomfortable. Why the fuck do we stay fat? Jesus Christ, I don't get it.
It moves around,
does it?
Yes.
As a submissive woman, met quite a few. So like, I'm hetero-romantic. I tend to have romantic relationships with men. I'm very queer. I sleep with anything, actually. Over the years. Animal, vegetable, mineral. You know. Come on in if you want to. There's a chair over there, or there's 2 chairs here if you want to sit down. If you're just walking on through and you feel a bit pressured, just keep walking. Poor people walking, I'm like, sit down! Oh, no wonder people think I'm a dominatrix. Oh, you've lost anything, are you okay? It just spreads
No,
everywhere, doesn't
I've
it?
been doing the gym for 12 months. I can lift massive weights, do stuff like, but it won't leave my stomach.
That's
It's
one of
an
the last
age thing, I'm
places
afraid.
to go. It's the way it's age as well. Yeah, it is. It's also so much more. And for what it's worth, I'm also a qualified nutritionist. It's not worth a lot, trust me.
Oh, I love it.
Please see a dietitian if you can. Right, so, but the idea of these workshops is anything and everything, and then it starts to develop. And I'm really interested in what you've got to say and your experience as well. Is anyone here a mental health professional? You might not want to put your hand up. Okay, so if you are, you know this, you can write to me, especially if you're on FetLife. You have to give me your real email. I'm really sorry about that. But if you do, you can get a free CPD certificate for an hour and a half. And those things are worth about 60 to 100 quid, aren't they? So they're free. You can have one if you want one, if it helps, unless you're, you know, even if you're in training or anything else as well. So that's for a psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, any form of mental health professional. We have to do career professional development hours every year. So I write those out. I also run a free workshop on a Thursday night every other week. We get anywhere between 50 to 200 people in every time. It's for us. And again, those things are when people ask me a certain subject. So like next week, I'm doing it with my best friend, Poppy. She is also a therapist. She's called the Sting Counsellor. I nicked that name after I did the kink shrink because somebody had a go at me because I know David. So like, once you know Cosmic, that's it. You're plastered under the same hellish headlines often. And somebody said, I'm not going to say who it really is, but at Sing Counsellor, that fucking awful woman. And I was like, oh, if I take that name, I can officially complain again. It works brilliantly. But I gave it to her a while ago, and we're doing a workshop on healthy kink and healthy power exchange. That's quite interesting, isn't it? And they're 2 hours long, but they're on Zoom, so you can just get in contact. Again, they're free CPD for anybody who wants them. I send you a certificate. So we do a different subject every 2 weeks, and they're completely free of charge as well. It's my way of giving back to the community as much as I can, because I also see 2 people for free a week as well. So I reckon being kind costs me about £1 a month, but I like being kind.
Do you record those Zoom?
I do. So they're on. Well, I don't. I make Cosmic do it. So they're on YouTube and they're on FetLife as well. So I put the videos up there. And I've got a back catalogue on FetLife of about 6 or 7, but on YouTube I think there are hundreds now of varying subjects. Yeah, I'm very opinionated. It's all about my experience and my professional experience and opinion, but I am very opinionated, especially when it comes to safety and things. So, over to you. Who's got a question that they
I've
would
got
like
a very quick question. Because
Blimey, loads of people.
I actually want to say this woman gave me 40 minutes of your time by accident today, which was...
Only when I was trying to stuff my face
Well, you
with
ended up
dinner.
stuffing my face with my shirt. But the thing it was moaning about, and I'm just going to chuck this as a question that you may want to deal with another time, is how does one be out kink positive and with the norms? And I'm not going to answer it now, but that's my main challenge over the last 4 years, is being out kink positive and dealing with the norms and the straights and the people that you have to deal with. I don't mean going into the bank dressed in fully rubber, you know, I mean, obviously that's a little bit.
No.
But that you've helped me for 40 minutes, and that is.
But there was a dominatrix last year who brought her submissive into a pub just at the end of lockdown.
Yeah.
And she took her upstairs and she tied her to a, or him to a, I don't quite know what happened, to the rafters upstairs in the family pub and started flogging her.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. But
No.
when people ask me questions, I've actually got in trouble.
I have a problem with that.
I've actually got barred from a couple of pubs in a certain town I live in
For
because
saying who you are.
No, because they've asked me and I've sent them the IG profile for LAMv, and sometimes it's got a dildo on the front. Now, what I do is over-deliver because I've been in mental health, so I know what my problems are. But what I say to you
You're
is,
not stopping doing it.
no, but what I'm going to say to you is thank you for that 40 minutes where you were trying to read your lunch today.
Well,
Send me the bill. But that was the issue, is dealing with the norms.
but I don't think there are many norms. Look,
No,
people have been
not that
kinky
you find
since
out.
people have been kinky since Babylonian. Like we're talking about forever. Kink isn't a new thing.
No.
It's not 50 Shades of Grey. I was reading a really interesting piece of research earlier that's been done about this woman, Debbie. I can't remember her name fully. Sorry, but she's been looking at sexual memes and how much the normalization of choking is coming into our everyday existence and how strong it is. And actually that people don't really know what they're doing when it comes to breath play. Breath play is the most serious. It's more dangerous than waterboarding. I really need to get that into your heads. So like biologically, chemically, everything that happens to us, even the shit and the cloth that you're putting in people's mouths, it is the most dangerous thing that we can do, breath play. And yet it's so normalised. And we were talking about the memes. So, and these memes are being introduced to kids as young as 11 and 12. So it's normalising that sort of sexual play. It's really normal to say, hi, can I have a kiss and can I choke you out? More than it's can I have sex in some way? And sex isn't just about penetration, is it? But so dealing with norms is quite difficult. I think when
Well, I've had girls ask me to choke them or refuse to because they don't have to do it. Because I'm old enough to know that I'll make a mistake and end up, so it's a good point there.
well, you kill people.
Yeah.
That is the side
That's
effect,
why I
or brain damage.
Yeah, I've always refused to do it.
But don't get me wrong, it's great fun. I've been passed out quite a few times. I really enjoy it. However, my blood pressure is higher and I'm 57. And actually with age, it increases danger. Did you know that?
Yes.
So the older we get, the more you choke someone out, the worse it is for you. So if you're young, you're kind of okay. It's helpful. But it's how, and it's lots of other things. I've got a massive piece of writing on how to choke as safely as possible. A huge piece of writing with lots and lots of science and biology references. So again, I put all my writings up as well anyway. But so how to be, I think it's how you dress it, and I think it's how you say it. I think if you're aggressive with it and you think you've got a right to impose on somebody else what you're doing, I don't think that's helpful. But I think if you say, no, I'm not quite, I'm more into the whole 50 Shades of Grey, we all say, oh, we shouldn't say that, but actually it's a great thing and it's a nice, easy one. Because actually, LGBTQI population in the UK, yeah, there was a space. Where was there? There was one over there. Oh, next to Craig in the corner. So, for example, when you look at how normalised it is, LGBTQI as a population in the UK is around 6% of us. Polyamory is around 4% of us. Kink is more around your 50 to 60%, but it might not be your kink. When someone says I'm kinky and you go, great, I can't wait to fist your ass and choke you out. And that person's having a panic attack because they thought, I just thought you were going to slap my bottom a bit. Like there's a difference, isn't there? We have to find out levels. And it's not a fucking competition. This is the other problem with it. So I like power exchange, and actually I like ultra violence. I like being punched and hit. So I'm not so much anymore. I think, I was talking about this earlier because I did Starlight Express when I was younger and I can still skate. And honestly, when I get on a pair of quads, sorry people, but when I get on a pair of quads and I'm like, oh, this is so cool, just do a little jump, do a little spin, do a little turn, and I'm loving it. And then I think, oh no, hang on, if I fall, it's 3 weeks in hospital with a broken hip. Whereas it used to be, I'd bounce on my arse and get straight back up again. So again, your body can't take certain things the older you get. The stiffer we get, especially if you're post-menopausal as well. So you have to really think about these things to make the most of it, is what I'm saying. Yeah. But I think normalisation is how you do it.
Yeah, I think my enthusiasm of actually being in the closet for 40 odd years as a kink coming out in the last 5 years.
If we
my
push too much,
enthusiasm is probably the problem.
Yes.
Not aggressive. I'm like,
No,
this is really cool. Look at the clothes, and then people go, oh,
because you did a really good post on Frenzy on that.
Yeah.
Frenzy.
Sorry, I'm
similar thing.
Yeah, I did do a post on Sub Frenzy. But yeah, it's we get into that, hey, one of my best
50
matches.
Shades is a great idea because I remember sitting in Spain around the pool and there was about 30 people reading it. So it's a normalised.
Oh, there were grey babies for the next 2 years. There was a massive influx of pregnancy, and they called them grey babies. Midwives, because they're not literally grey babies, unless they had some kind of breathing problem, actually, but they weren't grey babies. But they were grey babies because actually, your average housewife, I don't know who that is, but let's just say that for a minute. Your average housewife who was all of a sudden turned on by the idea of something, their sex drive went up.
Yeah.
So people were getting more sex, especially if we're talking, because it's a very heteronormative book, isn't it, as well? So it's very much about that. It's about power exchange. It's just about heterosexuals, and it's whatever. And off we go. And yeah, grey babies were a huge thing for all the years that it came out, as the different books came out. There was a huge increase in pregnancy. I don't remember the statistics, but I do remember one statistic from it, and that was the sale of nipple clamps when the book was released went up by 2,000%. 2,000%. And my question was, what sort of nipple clamp? Because now I'm a bit more worried, because if you pull that fucker off, your nipple's coming off with it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you pull that one off, you're okay. There are very different forms of clamps. I love, so you can buy this. You can buy these. They're meant for goat castration. And so they're these little clamps that work like this, and they've got 4 little prongs that come out. I'm such a pervert. And they've got these tiny rubber bands. You know, like when you have a skin tag and someone says put some string around it and pull it off. That's basically what they do for some animals. They tighten around the top of the testicle. Really sorry if you're a very pro animal. But they're really great on nipples, but boy, you've got to be able to get them off. And they've got to pull up. So they start to tighten underneath as you swell. So you've got to be really aware. Some of your faces are like, I'm never using that. Some of you are like, where did you get that?
Yeah.
But that's my point. We don't have to go in with, oh, these go castrators.
No,
So our enthusiasm starts getting in the
You're going to
way.
meet them where they are.
But also, I think what happens is, who here is kinky? Who here is interested in kink? Who here is polyamorous? Who here is queer? Under any of that spectrum, right? So, like, okay, so that's a lot of coverage, isn't it? But you've got to remember, you are 6% of the fucking population.
Yeah.
You are a very small percentage. Whereas when I go out into the world, I think all my mates are queer and kinky. I can talk about this shit. No, you can't. You're in Marks and Spencer's cafe. Mind you, they're probably all no, they're not. So, like, who else goes to Marks and Spencer's cafe sometimes? Right. So, love that. Yeah,
You hear it buzzing in the Marks and Spencer's cafe, I know it's in there.
it's me with my own iPhone.
Waitrose far better.
Yeah. My cargo shop's coming, don't worry. So it's, my God, delivered at 11 actually. But the point is, we expect, it's normality, isn't it? It's what we're used to. So when we talk about things, like you've now heard about these goat things, you might go and look them up somewhere. Some of you might already be doing it if you've got Wi-Fi. It becomes our normality, doesn't it? So we talk about these things, we're used to that. But actually what we forget is the shock factor when we go out and talk to everybody else and actually just meet someone in the high street. And actually, if you want someone, if you want to teach someone to be kinky, I've given up on dating sites recently, I really have. But even on field, the amount of times I get, oh, the things you could teach me. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess one young guy, bless him. So I looked at his profile and he said, well, can we talk? And I said, yeah, sure. He said, I said, you're in Spain though. I don't think this will work. And I don't mind an age gap. I've had lots of age gaps, all sorts of ways. But I'm definitely after a relationship that's more long-term nowadays. I'm much more into the connection before the, yes, I'm just going to do something sexual with you. My figures are astronomical when it comes to sex. They are more towards 1,000 than they are towards 500. So I've done a lot of sex over the years. And honestly, in my experience, where that goes is it can be good fun and it can be great. It's really mind-blowing. Mind-blowing sex comes from really good chemistry and really good connection and knowing someone's body and understanding what their wants are and being able to share your limits and being able to share all the things you want to do and share your fantasies. A one-night stand or a few nights or even a friend with benefits can really be great and it can build up slowly over time. I love the modern phrasing. Fuck me, I sound like I'm 93 now. A few years. You know, you can catch feelings though, can't you? Apparently, you catch them. That's the virus. But the truth is, there's a lot of chemicals involved in what we do. And if you start playing with pain and you start playing with, you know, that seduction and power exchange and all the things that it does, like you are so beautifully dressed, for example, right? You look incredible. No, you're really welcome. Right, so, but even the chemicals involved in just putting that stuff on, you too, like it, just putting the corset on, putting those things on and making that difference puts us in a different sexual frame of mind. And you, like, so we're dressed up, aren't we? People are dressed up. That, you know, when we do that, even putting a harness on, like it just makes a little bit of difference. It defines and says something different about us in a different way. Whereas here's me in my woolen long dress and the platform ups.
Yeah, but don't know what you're wearing underneath.
Really fucking boring underwear. However, I was there, my bras and knickers are always matching. You never know when you go into hospital, do you? That's what my mum told me. Yeah. My mum, oh, wait, because half the time they fucking twats. You have something to wear every day because we cut off you. Anyway, so it's also about connection. protection. It makes a real difference.
It's
It makes a
self-affirming,
much
actually.
better
I'm wearing a
sense.
pair of Spanx, Robert, and I've worn them to work just because I needed a bit of an uplift. And nobody knows. I know. I dress for me.
Apart from the sweat stripping.
No, they don't do that thing. That's what I do.
But so, like, coming out to somebody is all about how much we want to shop. Do we want to shop or don't we? Or to invite someone into something, it's not the best thing to say, "Hi, I'm really keen to go. I like it up the arse." If you're pruning your roses, it ain't the way to talk to someone. Whereas actually, if you say to someone, "No, I tend to prefer an alternative relationship to the mainstream." Oh, what sort? I like playing like a little bit like 50 Shades, a little bit of power, a little bit of different things. I find that a lot of fun. I'm a big believer in consent and knowledge. I think you should go to a psychology workshop and a physiology workshop before you even start. I do think that. I know it's really exciting to go and buy a new flogger. I just bought a new flogger. Of course, it's orange. I've got a bit of an obsession with orange. Much.
What you're saying extends to even sending somebody the IG profile for that.
It's too much.
I mean, not because of a sexual thing. They are a market stall person, and they do clothes, and they do old-fashioned counterculture, really call it, in their 30s, and I just love it.
But yeah.
And I was just trying to help
it's
them.
too much.
Yeah. I'm not interested in them sexually. Just somebody else might want
But
it.
when we're trying to help someone, we're on the drama triangle.
Yeah,
it's not our job
exactly.
to help anybody. So the drama triangle is persecutor, rescuer, and victim. And often when we're involved in non-adult relationships, that's where we go. My best example is the dishwasher. So I used to come home, so I used to work on Harley Street in an eating disorders clinic. You okay? You cold? I'm just It is hot in here, isn't it? So I can't take anything off. That would not look good. I was the clinical, clinical supervisor and training director of an eating disorders clinic. And I used to love working there, but on the way home, I'd be like, fucking late, isn't it? It's 11:30 at night. Trains are really delayed. Fucking cheap. And I'm feeling like the victim. My language becomes really victimy. It's not fair, nobody. And my obsession has become the fucking cunting dishwasher. Right? On the way home. So I haven't eaten properly either. Eating disorders, that's funny. I haven't eaten properly either. I'm a bit irritable and I'm like, I bet nobody has cleaned the whole on a dishwasher. I bet nobody has. And I'd sit and I'd get more and more irritable and I'd feel like the victim. I'd get really cross and I could feel I was thinking, air conditioning, thank you. And I would walk in and I'd go over to the dishwasher because now it's in my head because I'm feeling like the victim. So I go over to the dishwasher, I open the dishwasher, empty it. I'm not, Jesus, I've probably changed my dishwasher 3 times because the way I slammed down those hinges because I'm already fucked off, it's not good. So I'll slam it down. Somebody walks in, let's say that's a partner or a daughter, I have 4 daughters, and they come in and they say, "Hi, did you have a nice day?" Oh, they're on my drama triangle now. And this thing is like fucking sheets of ice. And they come over and they walked in and they've got no idea that I'm about to invite them on. By invite, I mean there's large hooks that you put around someone's neck and you pull them in. "Did you have a nice day?" "Big fucking bear if you'd emptied the dishwasher." Hello, darling. No. Because I'm feeling like the victim. So I'm inviting them onto the drama triangle to either be, they could jump on as persecution and say, "Don't fucking talk to me like that. Why are you doing that? That's really aggressive." Or, "Don't do that."
You're already expecting something. I mean, it sounds like an ex-wife. What was the 3?
Sorry, could you stop interrupting?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
But no, I wanted to remind you.
No, I will. So I promise you, I'll come to all of
3
it.
corners.
Yes, I will. So I'm inviting them to become the persecutor or the rescuer because I'm feeling like the victim. And we're going to run through these things really quickly. So in they walk, and I've attacked. It would have been better if you'd have emptied the dishwasher. They come in, and let's say it's one of my daughters. "That's not fair. I've had a really long day at school." "Why are you talking to me like that?" "School? You don't know your fucking born, love. Do you know how easy school is?" And we're in a fight. And we're going to swap between, this is every fight you've ever had, we're going to swap between victim and persecutor for a little while. She has another option. She can jump on as the rescuer. I'm feeling hard done to. My life is way worse than hers. Way worse. It's not. It's all bollocks, isn't it? We're not in an adult place having an adult conversation. She can jump on as rescuer. "I'll help you empty it." Help me? Help? You should have done it earlier. I don't need your help. Now I feel like the victim, so I've jumped onto a different place. Persecutors use words like "you should, you must." These are really good examples. I come over and say, "Hey, look, how do I do this?" And he snatches it off me, and he does it for me, and he gives it back. And I sort of say, I don't fucking know how to do that now. Who here is a techie? Come on, how often do you do that to other people, right? Instead of showing them really gently and helping them and enabling them, you take it, you give it to them, and you do it. I don't say thank you. That's the drama triangle. I don't want you to do it for me. I want you to help me to learn how to do it. But also, I need to say, I don't know how to do this. Please, can you show me? Can we sit together? And we need to ask. You know when you're trying to open that jar of strawberry jam from a Ocado or Waitrose, clearly. Right? You're trying to open like a strawberry jam and you can't do it, and somebody snatches it out of your hand or does something. No, you need to say, please, will you help me? People aren't mind readers. But this drama triangle is really interesting. And I think if we go in too loudly to the general public, we can actually become quite persecutory without realising. My youngest daughter is kinky, so I have a rainbow family of very different human beings. Not surprised they came out on me. So of different sexualities, different all sorts of, and my youngest lives with a friend of hers who is terribly straight and normal, whatever that means, right? We're going to use that very inappropriately, yeah. So, but Erin would tell her, oh yeah, oh my God, do you want to see my bruises? Look, and she's like, and her friend's like, and she said to her the other day, you've got to stop. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. And actually, you could tell her, but that's not fair. Erin's just, no, it is fair. We're all allowed to have our boundaries. If we go in too hard and fast, it's too much. So I think if you want to introduce someone to kink, I think you have to do it gently. I think you have to do it quietly. And I think, honestly, we have to learn to shut the fuck up with sharing. We are oversharers nowadays on social media and everywhere else as well. We were saying earlier, actually, I'm so fucking glad that social media was not around when I was 15, because I think I would have lost every job going probably since. Because we make mistakes when we're young. We fuck things up and we learn and we change. The school bully that you met isn't always still the school bully when you meet them 20 years later. In fact, they're probably not that successful and they're really struggling, to be fair. Their life was fucked up. Doesn't make it right that they bullied at all. Please don't get me wrong. However, often a school bully is somebody who is injured in some way or has kind of problems and is bullied themselves or is persecuted or has some kind of trauma. So they take it out on everybody. But actually, they might have dealt with that. They might be a nicer human being later. They might not. They might still be an utter cunt. And of course, you've got every right to do and say whatever you want at that time. Maybe not murder. A bit too far and it's not worth the outcome. But how do you find the right way to do things? Thanks. Right, so a couple of people had a question. A few people put their hands up.
This one might be a bit of a long, rambling question. I've often wondered where the ability to have an overlap between actual proper therapy and BDSM play could be. Because in my experience, I tend to be more willing to be vulnerable for myself as a switch when I'm bottoming. And so it makes me wonder if if there is any ethical way that a mental health professional could integrate something like restraint or bondage or sensory deprivation in order to get a more honest or explicit explanation or revelation from their patient.
In the UK, absolutely not.
Same in the US.
Same in the US, right? So it depends where you go. So this is like saying, what if we introduce microdosing or we introduce drugs and we do some kind of drug-induced therapy, which the UK are experimenting with at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
However, in other countries, lots of people do drug-induced therapy. Now, I think you've got to be very ready to do a change of chemical-induced therapy. I had a client who went over and did it and it absolutely failed for him and it took him back 2 years. God, we've got to work a lot harder now, so I think you've got to be very ready. Same with the EMDR, actually. Sometimes, so EMDR is eye movement rapid desensitization, which is supposed to be very good for trauma, and it can be really good for trauma. It's about stimulating your brain in certain ways. However, some people are quite ready for that. They need to get somewhere before they're capable of doing that. Ethically, I can't touch a client. I can't even do that, really. Although, I had one client I hadn't seen ever before, but it's always been done online, and she actually was down, and she came to my house, and she jumped up, and her legs and her arms were wrapped around me, and I was like, hi. And I am a toucher. I am a very physical human being. If you say have a hug, I'm like, yes, I'm in. I love physicality. Touch really matters. And I think there are times when you can ethically negotiate certain levels of touch and certain levels of intimacy and vulnerability. Can we bondage you up or tie? No, we can't, because we would just get in an awful lot of trouble and lose our license to practice as such. The same as if we were caught having sex outside, maybe even doing some kink if it was, most kink is illegal. Please don't think it isn't. It is. If you leave more than a trifling or transient mark on another human being, you can be arrested for it. We live in a very archaic society with very interesting rules. So if you have a love bite or you've ever given a love bite, you've technically broken the law. And we're still covered by acts from the 1800s instead of, there's lots of us fighting, right? Lots of us are fighting these things behind the scenes all the time to try and get these things changed in our own way as well. So no, there isn't. So drugs and all that doesn't work for everyone. I guess where I'd like to go with somebody, because I'm very relational and I create vulnerability and intimacy a lot, is that how do we do that without that? So you can put yourself there without having to tie yourself up, without having to do those things. Will there be a way in the future? Oh, there's so many arguments about this. So when we consider trauma, when you experience a trauma, so if you're going to see a therapist and you say to them, what trauma experience do you have and what qualifications do you have? If they've done a 2-year or a 4-year course, they've probably done a weekend on trauma. That's it. It's not a lot. I want to know what extra did you do, especially if you're going to work with my trauma. Did you do an extra 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years here? And hopefully they have more of a trauma-based qualification. Now, you could argue that everybody's coming to see someone like me who's got trauma, but we call everything trauma nowadays, and trauma is relative. Opening a can for somebody could be traumatic, whereas, being in a bomb situation and watching your parents killed isn't traumatic for somebody else. It's all about our ability to cope with things in different ways, and we're all different. So I think trauma comes into this, and understanding the brain during trauma as well, and understanding what happens. I love neuroscience, it's really important to me. Understanding all of those things can really help as well, and that makes a difference. So how can we help you get into that state without maybe tying you up? How can we take you somewhere? Not hypnotism, because again, that relies on me. This is about you learning to rely on you. My relationship when I meet a new client is I never want to see you again. It's the richest relationship on the planet. I'm going to know everything about you, the most intimate secrets. Really weird, isn't it, when you think about it? And I'm not a closed therapist. I work very openly and talk about my family, myself, and the relationships and my experience, but not all of us do that. But I do it very consciously and very aware because I go for regular supervision. The problem is a lot of people see re-traumatizing as helping. So a lot of people who have maybe had a sexual assault or a rape experience want to reenact it on the scene because that gives me power, it empowers me. I can say no at any time. When you reenact or recreate a trauma, you feel that trauma on a cellular level. If you read any of the experts on trauma, they talk about cellular experience, whereas maybe your mind doesn't remember, but your body does, on a cellular level. There is a really famous rape case of a woman who described her attacker as tall, black, hot skin, Rastafarian, probably long dreads. When the chemistry came back, when the when the DNA came back, it was a well-known rapist in the area. He was in his early 20s, white and ginger. Why did she get it so wrong? As she was being attacked, unfortunately, her head was back over a bed and she was being strangled. That does strange things to the brain. And she was looking at a poster of Bob Marley. So that memory is not admissible in court, right? It is not admissible in court. You can say what you want, but it will not prosecute somebody in and of itself. That's why so many rape cases don't go anywhere, because it's one person's word and memory against another. And memory is not, it's admissible in court and that we'll listen to it, but it might not prosecute the other person. It's not enough in and of itself. Because the way we do trauma in the brain is really interesting, it often stays on the top. If you think of the brain like a filter system, if one of the neuroscientists, feel free to kill me, this is a metaphor, right? So it's not technically correct, but it is a metaphor. When we process something in our memory, it comes through and it's like a car park. If you take the memory car park system, 7 spaces, maybe we can make 9, we can add to that. So if I say to you, name me something that's in a garden, you might go, oh, a table, a tree, shrubs. Whereas if you can redefine each of those under garden plants, garden trees, garden furniture, types of grass, you're going to remember a lot more because you've subdivided. And that's so we can maybe make it into 9 spaces. And then you might process that into long-term, short-term memory and the weird memory where you remember lyrics. because that's a completely different part of the system, isn't it? Because you're sitting there going, oh, Vienna. I watched the program last night and they didn't get it at all. Salt and pepper, didn't know what Vienna was. Fuck off.
It's also a part of the brain. It remembers celebrity.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Our brains are very interesting things. So we remember, but the problem is when you are traumatized, your body doesn't really want to know what's going on. It's absolutely awful what is happening to it. So it doesn't process it in the same way. It keeps it up here. So in order for you to get over a trauma, part of the argument is you need to take that in and then process it through and take it out and work with it. Now, if you're reenacting traumas, that can be really good for you. So like if you tied up in different things, but that can also go horribly wrong. What if you go into a space where you're not okay? What if I was running a workshop there a couple of years ago and this person came in and said, I hope you're not like all the other therapists who tell me I'm full of shit. And I was like, oh, okay, aggressive, but okay. And then this person carried on typing at different points. And basically they said that when they come out of subspace, they tend to punch the person that's with them. Full on punch the person that's with them and hurt them. And I said, okay, I am going to have an opinion now. I don't think you should be going into subspace with anybody until you have learned what the triggers are and why and how to control that, because you are a danger to yourself and to others in that moment. Oh, fucking hell, you're just like the rest. Well, we're all saying it, mate. Because that's extremely. Who would here would want to tie some up and think we're having a great time, and all of a sudden you've been punched in the nose and your nose is broken? I mean, unless you're a switch and you love that sort of thing. If that's your thing, that's okay. But the whole point is to make sure that you have consent. So, like, if you don't have a consent, it doesn't work, does it? You've got to be aware of what someone's about to do. And also, if someone is out of control, I don't know if you remember, there used to be a couple that came here, a very short, smaller dominatrix and her really tall male partner. And I've had many an argument in this workshop with them because she believes it's okay for her to beat him when she's angry and pissed off with life and he should just take it. And whatever she doles out, it helps her mood and her opinion in the day. So he should just put up with that. Now, I think the male subpsyche, if we're going to go for cis and gender, is very different to the female subpsyche. I think they're very different human beings. But they're not just different human beings. They have been sociologically and culturally pulled into certain areas and pushed into certain areas that says this is the way you have to be to see a dome or a dom, and this is the way you have to be to see a dom, depending on gender and everything. So there's really interesting manipulation that goes on there. Really interesting in the scene, but that was never spoken about. I saw this list the other day, this woman on FetLife, and she was sort of saying you have to be between the ages of 18 and 25. She was 50. You must be between the ages of 18 and 25. I prefer it if you're virginal or have hardly ever done this before. You will do this, you will. If that was someone else writing that, we go fucking apeshit. It was abusive. It was really horrific what she was saying, and it was targeting. But then what you get is the male saying, oh, yes, please, mistress, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. Whereas actually, I'm turning around and trying to say, what's in it for me? Why? But it's really like, what do I get from that? And how do I commit to that? So I think it's complex when you've got culture, you've got environment, you've got trauma, you've got all of these different things that impact us doing what we do, and then therapeutically. I know a couple of dominatrixes who actually do that, and some of them say they might be qualified counsellors, and that's worth looking at. But if they're a qualified counsellor and they get caught doing that, they won't be qualified for long. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about that. Plus, we can't guarantee what happens when we're in an emotional state of being. Who here's ever lost their shit and been quite surprised at what they do or say? Anyone ever? Like, when you lose it and you're like, if we can lose it in those circumstances, it's very dangerous potentially if we lose it in therapy. Unless we've got somebody who is really good at staying very calm and working with us with it. And that's hard. So I think it's a really complex question. I think it's about trauma. I think it's about many things. And I think you have to develop a really good relationship. Whereas actually, how do we put you into some kind of mental and emotional bondage? Or how do we get you into a vulnerable state so you can learn to do it? And I think COVID taught us that. Lockdown taught us that. How many people use BDSM to help calm their nerves or do pain play to help them feel better or any of those things? Do people do that here? Quite a few people do, on and off. It's a regulatory impact for some of us. It becomes a self-soothing mechanism. But if you don't live with a partner and all of a sudden you're in lockdown for 2 years, your mechanism is just fucked up totally. You can't have access to it. So for me, the mechanisms I want for the people I work with and for myself are completely reliant on me. And I don't necessarily mean about just tying my hand up or something else as well, or pain related. How can I do those in a healthier way for me as a human being that doesn't hurt me at the same time? That's what I'm interested in. And that's more important to get. And if I'm in the middle of Tesco's, I can't all of a sudden do some shibari, or I can't, you know, I'm not going to get my tits out and put them in frozen peas. Like, it's not, maybe. I've been chopped out of a few weight trays. I haven't. I'm thinking about it now. But, so, like, you know, and I do think we have to be very careful. We have this entitlement kink, which comes back to your point.
Your question is really interesting.
Yeah, but it comes back to our entitlement kink. You know, when we see people doing things outside in the streets and stuff, they're like, fuck, you know. I remember years ago, a long, long time ago, this is 20, 30 years. This is 20, 30 years ago, where this guy was saying on a particular forum, can't remember which one it was, probably Yahoo in those days. Jesus Christ, maybe IRC. Oh my God. Right, so, and he was saying that, you know, he showed his self. He took her to McDonald's and he made her eat the McDonald's off the floor. All I can think is, number one, why would you give anyone fucking McDonald's unless they really fancy it? Look, I like the old McDonald's, but it's not. So if you're showing them by giving them unhealthy food, I wonder who the fuck you are for a start. Okay, that's interesting. You've got a feeding issue. You're like, who are you? But he made her eat it off the floor in McDonald's. Who the fuck else was in the McDonald's?
Kids.
Children, potentially, families, just people. We don't have a right to say, by the way, this is my cunt, come in it, like, in the street. Like, that's just about propriety and respect for other human beings, isn't it? Because if you don't want to see something, why should we say, oh, no, it's my right, though? That's interesting. I don't know about that. I mean, if anyone disagrees with me, please say. But I do think there are limits and levels of propriety that we could have. And then there was another guy, of course, who said his sub misbehaved in Sainsbury's. They weren't Waitrose shoppers. That was it, you see. She misbehaved in Sainsbury's, and he took her outside. He pulled down her pants over the car, and he gave her a good spanking in the fucking car park. I have a problem with some of these public photos. Like, I've watched like somebody on FetLife. There's this yoga woman. I mean, she's amazing. Like, her feet are over here and everything. But that means she's very exposed in the field next to the motorway. All I can think of is shit. And then, like, you know, because we look at things like, think about the consequences of what you're doing. I think it's really important. And if you flash someone, if you're in America or you're in the UK, so like, if you are born with a cock, good for you. You can take it out and quite hide it should you need a piss. Me, I have to lift everything up, pull everything down, and I have to squat, which means you can see every fucking pot me unless I've got my shiwi handy. But I've still got a load of stuff on probably because I don't want to splash my fancy new ones. Right, so once you expose yourself, however, you are also likely to go on the sex offenders register. So just by you taking a squat and copping a piss, regardless of your gender, you could be. I'm not saying you will be, but you could be. Now, when we think of the sex offenders register, we think, oh, it's full of perverts and terrible people who do terrible things to children. It's not. It's also full of people who have done something wrong without realising the consequence of it. Are you aware of the consequences of everything that you do? Because when you go to court, you saying I didn't know isn't a defence.
I was going to say just an interesting point there. In the US, there's a bit of a kind of there's a real issue with people getting put on the sex offenders registry for just taking a piss in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because a lot of the time, I mean, we don't have as much of an issue here, but a lot of the time, cops are just trying to get quotas out there.
Yeah.
They're just told you need to get this many people for this, and they just go, right, well, we can get him very easily. Put on the sex offender registry. So it's something that you do have to be careful about.
I was saying earlier to you, wasn't I, about there were two 15-year-olds about 3 years ago who were the first two children to be prosecuted under the sex offenders register in the UK for sending each other graphic sexual nude content. They are consenting partners. Now you can tell them they can't consent because they're 15. They're both fucking 15, for fuck's sake. They're in a relationship, they're having sex. Deal with it. Look, if he was 20, or she was 20 and he was 12, and she was 12, or they and they, then I've got a different problem. They're two 15-year-olds having sex. Normally the police don't get involved. But the problem is the school got involved. It escalated. Lots of new photographs ending. Plus, he unfortunately showed his mates her photographs. Right, because we do, because we're boasting, aren't we? I remember I was seeing a much younger guy. He came over and he went, "Fuck me, do you think this is Chelsea?" So it's one of the girls in the village. I went, "I don't want to see it. Why have you got that video? It's a threesome video. Why the fuck have you got that video? They look underage to me. They look very young." He went, "Someone just Bluetooth it in the pub." Never accept that shit. You are responsible for having it. But these two 15-year-olds are on the sex offenders register. I think they're about 18 now. That's what you're saying, because you were saying as well, during that conversation, they've now got the next, their lives are ruined. Absolutely ruined, because they will not get a normal job. They will have that following them forever. And you know, we are stupid. You know how many paediatricians have their houses fucking bumped up because someone goes, "Paediatrician, they're into children, aren't they?" No, they work with children, they're doctors. There's a big difference between a paedophile and a paediatrician. But we are stupid. We're not all stupid all the time, but you know, we've got to be very careful. You wanted to say.
It's a bit of a part of that, but the point you made about sort of people peeing on the street, it's also they kind of had to put that law in because a lot of people expose themselves in wherever, and then when they would do so, would say, "I'm actually just trying to pee."
Yes.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah, it is a fair point. You're right.
It's also that's one of those legal urban legends that's not actually as prevalent as people believe.
I'm sure it's not massively prevalent.
You
but it's
absolutely can be charged, and it's one of those things where if the officer says you're exposing your genitals with reckless disregard,
Yeah.
then you can be charged with public indecency. But usually, getting charged for urinating in public is actually a disorderly conduct misdemeanor. But of course, it varies from state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So, and it's also like if you're a repeat offender, if it's the first time you might just get a ticket, the second time you're a lot more likely to get a bigger charge.
Yeah, no, it's just things I've heard of
And it's
people.
also really important to remember as well that we also need to pee in the fucking street. Who I that chemo 3 years ago. I can't tell you honestly, my bladder is not what it used to be. Like, you know, if you want to fist me, I'm likely to piss over your hand. That is just the truth nowadays, right? I'm kidding. Maybe not. Right, so but if I need to pee, I need a pee. And your squirts, by the way, still make me piss. I know you want to argue with me, that is not true, but that's a whole other story, right? So your skin glands and other things are involved. Your red blood, trust me, it is still mainly urine. But what's interesting is I've got this app on my phone. Now, I had a heat card when I was in chemo, so I could say to somebody, "I really need to use your toilet." They're way more likely to let me because I had a heat card. And a heat card is this person is fucked up, help them. That's what it is. You can get it for different medication as well, but I was bored. Very obvious I wasn't in the best of places, and I looked grey baby, not. So people are more helpful, but actually, you know, sometimes you just need to pee, don't you? Like, you really need to pee. And the public toilets everywhere are now on the decrease. My app that says public toilets is like, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. And like, if you're walking around London, you're like, "Oh, where's the nearest fucking pub? Quick." Or where's the nearest cafe or Costa that I can just rush in and hopefully nobody notices that I'm not like it. I'm just going to Coke in a minute, sorry. Because of course I'm a proper good girl. So those things come into it.
Yeah, I just want to put a bit of relative in. You're absolutely right. People who are getting a bit older tend to go to the toilet a lot more. Depending on health conditions, even more so. I probably go about 30 times a day sometimes, a lot in the night. But the issue is that, you know, my wife, who's the most normal person you've had, will quite happily squat down while she's in the middle of nowhere on a bike because she has to have a pee. I stand and have a look, but it wouldn't stop her. And, you know, once in my life, I was chased by the police for having a pee in a public place. I was 20 years old. I was peeing against the Queen's Garden in Hollywood Palace. I needed to go, and I was desperate. But when the police started chasing me and got out the Land Rover, I ran straight up the side of Arthur's Seat with a nice path, and they didn't follow me.
You got away.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
but they would have charged me because it was Holyrood Palace all I was filming against. So,
It's all where, which is where, isn't it?
so from then on
That
in,
makes
I
it
do it in a time and a place when I'm out the bike, there's no one around, there's bushes around, and we have to go. That's it.
Sorry, the one
Just a pro tip for anyone with a penis or a stand to pee. Something that I've done when I've needed to pee, because well, in some countries like Bolivia, if you are someone with internal genitals and you want to pee, all you got to do is hitch up your skirt and it's completely normal.
Yeah, my wife does.
Yeah. Actually, this one was a thing I did in Morocco. If you're someone with a penis and you need to pee, misdirection. I'm just standing on the side of the road taking a picture. My hand's not on my cock, so no one notices. Oh, I need to tie my shoe and zip that up. No one sees what you're doing.
But legality is interesting.
Yeah, that's a different thing than legality.
Yeah, so like when we're talking about
Don't slap that stick.
that, you will get arrested. But what the three of you are saying is really relevant. It's really relevant to BDSM as well. Look, you might have a really good time and mean no harm, and you might scratch someone and draw blood. Let's say you do that. For that person, so I had a client about 6 years ago. Phoned me up and said, I need an extra session. Hi, how are you? Are you okay? No, I'm really not okay. I've just been into the police station. Fuck, what happened? Do you need an extra session? Yes, please, can we talk? Fitted him in. That's easy in my diary. Fitted in, we have a conversation. So we've been speaking about this woman he was about to meet. She wanted, do you need to
Yeah, I
go through that?
Of course, well, bathroom top.
So he met this woman. He's heterosexual. She was heterosexual. She wanted to be caned, and she would like to be caned to the point of bleeding. So that's your heavier Singapore cane or your very thin cane that maybe is just going to open up the skin. And especially if you warm up the skin first and get it nice and tender, much more likely to split, depending. Or take a few aspirin before you go over there. Right, so that's what she wanted. And there's absolute permission and consent for sex. Please fuck me afterwards. What I would like is, as you're banging against me, I would like to feel the blood running down. And if you come inside me, that was agreed as well. I don't know if they had tests, that wasn't. I'd like it to mix with the blood. I'd like you to come inside me, pull it out, rub it into my arse. This was all very graphically written and agreed to. They do this. They do it all night. They have a great time. He's dead to the world. He wakes up and he's like, well, she's gone. Okay. I thought we was quite a good night. I thought we were going to do it again, or maybe there's blood all over the sheets as well. The next thing you know is there's a knock at the door. The police have turned up. Now, what you need to realise is, even if you give consent, you can't legally give consent to violence against you. So actually, what he's just committed is a crime in the UK and some states in America, and it's even worse in other countries. Depends where you come from. So know your legality. So he said, no, it's all consensual. Doesn't make any difference. However, it does sometimes, because these weren't cunts. They did have a conversation down the police station. He showed them all the texts, and he said, the officer said, she's clearly just had regrets, and we're not going to take this any further. Thank fuck for saying human being, because she did consent. She wasn't coerced. I'm not talking about retroactive withdrawal of consent. I mean, I really want to do two PhDs. I won't because of my own shit. But one is about retroactive withdrawal of consent as an act of shame to do something else. And the transgenerational and epigenetic scripting of sexually submissive women. They're my two main interests, really, because it's me, especially that last one. So he was really lucky because the police take it out of your hands. It's all about the CPS, which is the Crown Prosecution Service. And if they think there's a case, they will do it, whether you consent or not.
It's just I thought that had a video where you were speaking about consent and when you can withdraw. I was thinking a person who has a mental illness, not something super horrible, like depression or anxiety, something like that. How much of consent a person like that can give? Because what if that person is doing it because, I don't know, wants to feel something, but doesn't actually want to because doesn't know if they want to?
So in legality, in law, it's about compos mentis. If the person with serious depression or anxiety can get on with their life and manage their life, it will not be a point in court. You can't come around and say there was coercion or something happened and I do it because I'm seriously depressed. So, because when we talk about trauma responses and all sorts of different things, we can talk about, you've heard of the fight, flight, freeze? Yeah, some of you? Or so our brain goes into an interesting place, but there's also fuck, friend, flop, foe, and fawn, which is our sympathetic nervous system having a major response and acting in a certain way. And fawning is one of the worst ones you can get, especially if it's mixed with fuck. I'll come back to you in 1 second. So if you're a fucking fawner or a fawning fucker, take that how you will, but you have sex and you have it because it's better for you to do the good thing for the person because you're scared. Now, if you can try to say that there was coercion involved, that you didn't consent, but if you gave consent, so again, I had a client recently, and I still promise I'll come back to you, she was stealth. Do you know what stealthing is? So stealthing is the removal of a condom without consent. It is, it is classified as rape in the UK now, right? It's just changed. So if you, well, it's just changed in actually. So if you have somebody who removes a condom without consent, you can now do them for sexual assault. Slowly but surely.
Male or female?
Both actually. It goes both ways. So if you prick holes in a cap or prick holes in a condom as a person who wants to get pregnant, that is stealthing. Or if you remove a condom or remove some form of protection without telling the person you are inside of, I'll come back to you in 1 second, promise, then that is also considered sexual assault. So, you know, there used to be a lot of people who put holes in things because they wanted to get pregnant or say, no, I can only have unprotected sex because I can't feel anything. Classic.
That's
I've got a mouth and an arse. They'll do. So the point here is, the problem is when she told me this, she didn't realise that there was sexual assault involved. So I've got to be very careful as a therapist there, because if I tell her she's in trauma or she's had a trauma, that's not always my job. I've got to go very careful. However, somebody did tell her, and we had conversations about it, and she did go to the police. But what she didn't tell me is, this is an NHS worker apparently. So he took her into a doctor's office locally, fucking sketchy person, takes her into a doctor's office and bends her over the desk in the doctor's office. Unfortunately, even though it's written to say very clearly we must have protected sex, during sex what she said was, you can do anything you want to me. Now as a submissive, that's quite a common thing to say. Fucking kill me. Look, we say some crazy things with those chemicals in our heads, and so do you as a top. Oh, yeah. Fucking drill you into the floor. Well, you're not, are you? Crucifixion, lovely. Hands up on the left. That's a very old joke, unless you know the life of Brian, yeah. But so it's an interesting one. So what I'm telling you is be fucking careful what you say to somebody, because that consent overrode the written, which I think is terrible. So now what I do, because I go fucking all out, is, by the way, anything I write is absolute. If I say something in the moment, I expect you, as a dominant human being, to have the wherewithal to say, I don't think you meant that. Can we introduce that later or another day? Let's just stop what we're doing. Rather than take it as permission to say, woohoo, double fisting for me. You were going to say?
Just to do with that question, would that be under the, legally under the Mental Capacity Act 2005?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So, but the problem is...
Medical training.
But the problem is, you've got to be fairly not okay to fail that.
Yeah.
Really not okay.
Yeah.
Like in
I'm
psychosis
talking legally, not ethically.
Yeah, and that's the problem with ethics, isn't it? I'll come back to you in 1 second.
I work in the social violence sector, and I'm struck by the suggestion that written sexual consent or consent for a kinky play is like a contract you can sign, and no matter what someone has texted beforehand, it's retractable.
Yeah.
So it's also a common myth to be pushing it all the time, but false allegations are high. So I'm struck by your client with how you presented that case, and they're saying she consented to this kind of caning on message beforehand, and then has cried non-consent afterwards, gone to the police, as if it's not possible that it could have been non-consensual no matter what.
Yeah, no, it's completely possible, of course it is. Yeah. However, all the way through, she was very up for it, and there is a subgroup on Reddit where some people record sexual encounters illegally in order to protect themselves because of this sort of thing. And we make this myth of everybody's a sexual abuser. The figures are under 7% of false accusations. They're much lower. They're in single-digit figures. When somebody tells you something, it's much more likely to have happened. It is, so I completely agree with you. And in this particular case, it was definitely the other way around. Genius. How do I know that? Because the police did talk to her afterwards, and there's a lot more that I haven't said, so I can't give the whole story. But so yes, I completely agree with you, and I get it. And the problem is as well, when you've got a lot of domestic violence, a lot of people feel very trapped and can't escape their situation, albeit through finance, social pressure. So especially in domestic violence, people are often they're taken away from their family, aren't they? So they can't have conversations, and they've got nowhere to go, and they've got no financial capacity to go anywhere. Now, there are lots of places people can go, lots of wonderful charities around. However, most people don't think that they can. And the statistics are still that it's way more women than it is men. I see it a lot of, yeah, but it's men as well. Yes, it is. I understand that. And if you want to look at the figures, help yourself. They're much higher than women still. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts?
Yes, just in terms of that point, yes, statistically speaking, it's women are so much more vulnerable, but also, as far as men are much more likely to not disclose and report, or not to seek help because they of identifying their experiences as abusive. In terms of the legal standard that you keep talking about, in terms of consent, it's not only about the legal standard to be met. Someone needs to have reasonable grounds to believe that someone isn't consenting and to perform whatever act in order for them to be found guilty of a sexual misdemeanor. So the communication part is huge, which is where making space for somebody to communicate honestly is now something that
It's so important. And I think as well, but I think that leads me to a really, really important point, and that is if you have a power differentiation in your relationship, if you've got somebody who is seen as the top, the master, the dominant, regardless of their gender, and you've got a submissive, you need to have negotiations on an equal level. Because if you feel that you have to please the person or get it right, or maybe you're mental health, let's say you've got a very strong case of somebody who's so fearful of abandonment that they will do anything in order to not be abandoned. You have to be aware of those things when you're talking to someone. Pre-morteming is really important to me. What could go wrong here? What's my solution? What can I do? Have I really got this person's consent? I've broken consent. My most time that I talk about was my partner and I at the time were asked to kidnap a incredible Amazonian woman. She was about 6'3", really powerful and strong. That comes into it. We tied her to a St Andrew's cross. We had all the limits written out, what she would do, what she wouldn't do, and how it would work, and everything else as well. This is when I was very switchy. We tied her to an oak bed that we bought, I think, at Sexhibition. That was the bottom of the bed. You took these things off and you lifted this oak up, and it hooked and hinged on itself. And it made a cross. Amazing bed at the time.
I remember that one.
Do you? Okay.
Never been there, but your amendment the model. I didn't see yours.
Yeah, no. Well, unless we're not telling everyone something. And we were doing this stuff, and at one point I slapped her around the face. Not particularly hard, but I slapped her around the face. She broke the bed on one side in half trying to comfort me. Oak bed. Now she was very tall and very strong, but what that was every fight, flight, freeze, reflex, she's fighting. And I was like, something's gone really wrong here. And I checked the list again, and I'm like, have I done anything wrong? What the fuck, what have I done? And I'm really panicking and scared, and also feeling like a piece of shit. Consent really matters to me. However, we used to get cluster fights. This was a cluster fight. Phoned her dominant, who'd set this all up, and he went, fuck, I forgot that one on the list there. She hates that. And this was over 20 years ago, I will never, ever not negotiate with a person directly. That's something I learned 20 years ago because he forgot. Now, actually, we can forget too. Shit, I forgot to say. So, for example, I've got a weird limit, a boundary when it comes to pinching. I don't like being pinched and I don't like being bitten, personally. If you bite or pinch me, I'm gone. My mood's changed. I'm like, oh, no, don't do that to me. I don't like that. And I'm out. I'm out of that southern headspace. It's gone. Who here loves being bitten and pinched? Okay, so it's so interesting, isn't it? We've all got these different things. You hate it. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you love it, but it's so funny, isn't it? I'm like, well, that's turning me off. Ow, why did you bite me, you fucking wanker? I'm out. I'm gone. It's really important that we communicate those things, and that's why I think we should take more time to have these conversations. Because I would argue 20 years ago, there was no time in those conversations. It was a very, very different world. And it's really changed dramatically. And I carry so much shame around that incident. I share it a lot because that is my mistake. Because I will never, ever again not negotiate with the person that I'm with. I will never take a second person's opinion. And that's really hard if somebody wants to set something up for somebody else. I will never be involved in that level of surprise because my experience of it was fucking horrific.
Yeah, so it's a similar thing. So you negotiate what you're going to do with your play partner and partner, and then one of you changes your mind halfway through, but you had negotiated it, and you both end up feeling shit. I suppose.
Well, that's what
So
safe
it's that
words are for, aren't
psychological. Well, yeah, but the whole thing.
Yeah.
One person says, "I didn't want to do this at all." So had you coerced them to do it, or is it they were doing it to please you, or whatever? But there's damage all round,
Yeah.
psychological damage, and I don't know. Is there any way you can communicate better to prevent that? Say, do you really mean that? Are you really okay with that?
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what you said and what you said, because this kind of gets to another point about how just because you have something written doesn't mean that you can't revoke consent in the midst of it. And I don't.
Sorry,
it's like,
sorry. Come on.
it's like you said, like safe words are an important part of it, but like when you're looking at it from a legal perspective, it's like if someone has safe worded or if they did a freeze or
Or
fawn.
CNC.
Yeah.
Consensual non-consent.
Mhm.
I say as well, are they in a situation where they can say, or they
Well,
do
that's the
spaced
thing.
out?
That's why I think it's so important to take your time and to listen to somebody and listen to their past experiences, listen to what they want. Are they trying to please me here? There's a lot of responsibility at the top in that, but there's just as much responsibility to the bottom as well. To say, the point is, only I can keep myself safe. No one else will do that for me. And it's a fallacy to think you can keep yourself safe. But if you've got someone who's bigger, stronger, or whatever, this idea of, oh no, I'll say no and everyone listens to me. No.
Yeah, you're tied up. You're not going to do a lot about it, are you?
No. Yeah, well, don't get tied up.
I teach about sexual consent a lot as my main job, and there's a legal standard that is dependent on the jurisdiction, but there's also like an ethical standard which is different.
Yeah.
And I think framing the conversation around consent, around what could or couldn't lead to prosecution, is a kind of narrow way of looking at it, which won't protect anyone from harm or from like consequences of being done, because the criminal justice system is not designed to apply to instances of sexual harm with like kink or not. Like we're saying that by law, hitting someone hard enough for them to bruise is non-consensual. So the law is like not a standard that we want us. If we are seeking to be ethical people and to play and to fuck ethically, then we're gonna have to go beyond like what the law has to say, because it's incredibly reductive.
Narrow.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And like I teach, so we're doing clear on consent in kink cock workshop next month. And there you go. And I use Betty Martin's wheel. I've got lots of different things about consent, really, and that's the whole point of it. It is not about what is right or wrong. It is about what's right or wrong for you, and what ethics and morals you want to bring into it. And it's a completely different standard. I would 100% agree with you. And that's way more important, because actually you're going to cause damage to another human being, whether you've broken the law or not. And that's not funny. And damage to yourself. You know, it's not damage. Yeah, that word as well. It's interesting, isn't it? But we hurt people. We hurt other human beings. We can hurt them with words. We can hurt them with actions, behaviour. We can hurt them just by cheating on them and all sorts of different things. Yeah. If you want to cheat on someone, be polyamorous or leave. And by the way, people who are polyamorous also have a lot of cheating. They really do. There's still a lot of lying and you know, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about that. I'm a cut queen. So one of my favourite kinks is the person I love, by the way, is someone I'm really, I want to be really into them. I love them fucking someone else. I really enjoy it, but I like to feel humiliated over it as well as compassion. I like a mixture of both. I want to hear all the graphic details about how they're different in so many ways, and that's what turns me on. So jealousy becomes my switch in a positive way, not a negative way. And I love hearing about it, and it means a lot to me. And I really love it, but it's got to be done consensually. It's got to be done in the right way. And I remember being really clear about this, and I was with someone, and his phone went, and he was in the shower, and I said, "Your phone's gone." He went, "Oh, can you pass it to me?" Actually, just read it out to me. So I read out his Facebook message. It says, "Can't wait to be with you. Are you still leaving her?"
Oops.
Dan? Watch the actual fuck. Oh shit, it was one of those things I was kind of keep as a surprise for you. No, I like those sort of surprises, but you just said you're leaving me. You went, no, that's what I'm telling her. I said, no, I've still got a problem with you. You're lying to her now and telling her something. I don't know which way it was. We can never know because
Minefield.
it's a fucking minefield. But it's a minefield, again, ethically, you tread carefully on. Because it isn't whether the bomb goes off or not, it's whether you're even fucking close to it. And that's where the ethics come into it. It really, really matters. We've got to be careful of other human beings. And we've got to be a little more protective and better about ourselves. A lot of people think, especially in DS, that the responsibility lies
Sorry, what's
with the
this?
top.
Sorry.
So if you've got, so BDSM, so bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, or you've got dominant submissive, or you've got power exchange, whichever way you look at it, we think that the top should be the one responsible. We think that the top isn't going to get dropped, or isn't going to have a struggle and feel really bad or whatever. We all feel these things at different times. Now, do I think if you're tied up and someone's building something and you've gone into a different headspace that this person is now got to think differently? Yes, ethically, morally, and legally. People always say don't ever run over to a scene or stop someone. About 15 years ago, a friend of mine was tied up at a private party. And this guy started doing stuff, and I'm watching him, and I'm thinking, that's not her norm. That's not what she consents to. I know her really well. She is out of it. She's gone. She's so heady. She's sort of moaning a bit. I mean, that's consent, isn't it? She's got a wet cunt. She's moaning. Consent, isn't it? No. And by the way, wetness is a response from fear. Can we really get that straight? When someone says, oh, you're wet, you really want this, don't you? No, well, you've just terrified me. It's one or the other. Or, you know, it's a natural physiological response. It's not just because I want you. It's just ridiculous things that we say. Like you were saying, it's that stuff we put out there that become norms, and you were saying that too. They're misconceptions that we put out. You know, the amount of phone calls I've had where someone's saying, oh, I want to do this to you, and I've got my earpiece in and I'm changing the fucking cat litter. Am I really turning you on? No. Changing the cat litter. Or maybe you are, but maybe I shouldn't change the cat litter in that moment. But, you know, it can be a game, can't it? But I went over and I said to him, I'm doing so many things wrong here in so many ways, but I'm doing them right for me. I want you to stop touching her. Who fuck are you? You know who I am. I'm her friend. She's fine. I don't think she is. I want you to stop. No DMs, private party. Bring her round. Takes a good half hour for her to come back. Are you okay? He was doing these things to you and I interfered and I don't feel like I should have done. However, I'm that person who screams on the tube, but yeah, on that one. And she said, no, I didn't want you to. I think we should speak out sometimes when you know someone really well and they're not in the space to help themselves. That's why I don't believe in kink. I don't believe in drugs and kink. I think you have to be compos mentis. That said, my best fantasy is give me some rohypnol, do terrible things to me and film it, show me afterwards. I don't actually want to do it. It's a fantasy, there's a difference. I don't want the flashbacks, I don't want the shit that comes with that, but it's a lovely fantasy if I'm wanking. And they're different to reality, aren't they? They don't become consent for somebody else, they really don't. Okay, what's the time? Anyone got a final question? I'll come back to you as well.
Yes, I'm studying psychology. I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations for good papers to read on BDSM and psychology and that sort of thing. Preferably like peer reviewed,
Yeah, so if you contact me privately, yes, there are, and there are more being done than ever before. We're getting much better at it. The same as non-binary research, gender research. It's changing slowly but surely. A lot of people refer back to like Pamela Stevenson. Yes, not the 9-foot news, but she's also a psychotherapist. But she did a very small study. There are very small studies of some of the things that we do that prove things in a certain way. But that's a bit like going back to saying that some of the stuff we've looked at is don't eat sugar, don't eat fat. It's just all a fantasy. The research it was based on was absolutely fucking horrific. And that's the problem. So yes, there is more and more coming out, more and more people doing PhDs and really looking at this stuff. So yeah, slowly but surely. And there are a few good books on it. I think there is a small percentage of BDSM, but I also think you need to look at papers that do look at trauma, that do look at domestic violence, that do look at sexual consent as well. So you've got this generalised view of it.
Yeah, I do read some papers on those, but I was wondering if they're at least kind of specifically about BDSM.
if you are studying, you have access, I'm assuming, because
You know I do it, have access to.
yeah, so I reference a lot of papers under stuff that I write. Sometimes, if you've ever read my writing, not always, but sometimes I do. And they do say I can't access it because you're not studying, you have to pay. So yes, there are. And there are some really good ones. I think, honey, you were going to ask something.
Yes. So this might boil down to you would have to speak to the person themselves to figure this out, but there is
Often does.
there is a sort of see occasionally where there's quite a lot of trauma associated with reaching orgasm, and she very much wants to, and I would very much like to give her that experience. But is there anything that as a dominant I can do to help make someone feel in a safer place and more comfortable?
Be trustworthy.
Yeah, I understand. I mean that, but is there
Be trustworthy, don't push any limits or boundaries,
course,
go really slowly. And honestly, the problem if you're anorgasmic, especially related to trauma, so go and see a fully qualified psychosexual psychotherapist. There's a real difference, right? So if you're a generalized therapist or whatever, I've done 2 years of extra training to make me psychosexual psychotherapist, which covers sexual problems and issues and a separate trauma course. So, there are lots of things that we can do. There are lots of things that we can do with anorgasm. Stop trying to chase the orgasm. Fucking just stop. And that's really important around erectile dysfunction as well. Especially like male penile anorgasmia is actually more unusual than someone with a vagina. The statistics are very different. However, the key is to just bring it back. Pleasurable experience. So one of the things, the problem is if that person has a very serious trauma, we're just re-traumatizing every time we try. So for me, the trauma needs sorting, but I might be wrong, someone else might have a different opinion here. I think that's important. If the person really wants to, you've just got to go very slowly and very carefully. I often see couples who want to get to that and work with them as a couple and give them techniques and things that they can do, but it's all about stop chasing it.
Yeah, I mean, in this specific case, I think she wants to very much and can get very close, and then it becomes too intense for her. So I'll bring it back.
But you need to stop it even before that. So the intensity itself is a problem. So what you need to do is just maybe a minute or so. And she says, this is really pleasurable. My body's coming. You're like, awesome. Let's finish on a high. And then you pull it back. And then she's achieved something. So she feels good about it. Whereas if you're going to there and go, it's too intense, stop, you've already failed. So you need to bring it backwards. That's one technique. And obviously, not for you to talk about, for her to talk about the trauma with somebody who maybe knows what they're doing. But yeah, bring it back. So if you think, well, I'm really fucking trying to come here, you've all thought that, haven't you? Like at one stage in your life, there's a lot of pressure. Your head gets so much in the way. Look, orgasms are very strange things, especially in women, actually. They're much more complex in vagina, cis-born women. They're much more complex. They're much more complex to have chemically and physiologically than they are if you're a penis owner. So these are a lot easier, of course. So if they're a lot more complex, actually, that's not saying that people don't have problems, but the actual physiology of it, the process is way more complex. What people don't realise with trauma as well is, and I'm sure you've come across this as a lot, is that not only do people who are sexually assaulted or raped or actually victims of domestic violence, especially if there's sexual abuse in there as well, get wet, they also orgasm completely against their own body's will. Like your own will, your body does it physiologically. So you can actually be raped by a complete stranger and have a full penetrative orgasm if you are likely to come from penetration. So there's so much trauma associated with these things. I don't know what her trauma is, I don't know what's happened, but you need to count the successes. I work a lot with cheerleading. I know that's a really strange segue. So I work a lot with cheerleaders. And if I've got a kid who, because we're going to Worlds next year and Summit and the Bahamas, I'm not going to all of those, but I'm going to be in America with the Summit team and for the end of Worlds. And we've got a team going for Worlds, we've got 2 teams going for Summit. So Summit is levels 1 to 3 and Worlds is levels 3 to 8. Nothing to you, but that's fine. Right, so it's all about different levels. So we've won back-to-back Summit for the last 3 to 4 years. So my daughter's gym are world champions again and again and again. And Pink, the level 5 group, have come second in the world. In fact, Shadow, their team, are the best team in the world. They're the only team to have scored 100 as well. So we work a lot with those mental blocks and those sports blocks that kids go through. And the problem is if you say to someone, you can, they'll nod at you, especially if they're young or vulnerable, which a lot of us are. We stick at the edge of our trauma. If you nod and they're nodding, going, yeah, but inside they're going, I can't! Really loudly. And that's the major message, I won't. So it's not about forcing getting to the end. It's always about going backwards, practicing the drills, taking it back down to where they can achieve and feel good and get things done. Actually, with domestic violence, when you look at that, I'm sure you see this an awful lot, whereby you want someone to re-empower themselves and learn to trust themselves. It's such an important part of the process, isn't it? I'm sure you found that.
Those are called process goals in school.
Yes, absolutely. It's the same principle for somebody with trauma, that we need to learn to say, oh my God, I did it, I'm capable, I can. Whereas if we keep going for the end goal and you can't, look, to throw yourself backwards is really weird. If you're doing a round off back handspring and a full twist and you're landing on your feet, you try it now. Go on, just chuck yourself in the air and go. It's really weird, isn't it? It's a strange thing to do. So our body does all sorts of things. Same with trauma, lots of interesting cellular level responses. The same with domestic violence. It actually becomes a body response and a mind response. So we need to go back and get successes along the way. So the more backwards you can go, we've been doing this for 30 seconds, amazing, let's stop, let's do something else. Stretch that to 40, just take the pressure off. Do you know, the amount of couples I see who have sexual problems, it's just so interesting. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I've read the science behind it. But when you try and say to them, right, do not have sex. You are not having sex for at least 3 to 4 weeks. So I met this couple quite a long time ago. They didn't know. So it's a very small world, the BDSM world, so I have to be very careful about who I see and the context and the connections. And I saw this couple and they went to see a friend of theirs and they said, so our therapist has told us not to have sex. And she said, well, who the fuck is that as a therapist? That's a ridiculous thing to say. And they said it was Deb. She went, oh, it's all right, she said it. Really made me laugh. But I didn't know they knew each other. And that's the problem with this world. However, I did say to them, I don't want you to have sex. It's up to you. It's your choice. I don't say you've got to. You are responsible for what you do. I would like you to stop. You can touch, play, tease. So we're trying to get a little bit of tantric connection going on over the long term. They fuck like rabbits for weeks after that because I said don't. Very good sex, but the work still needed doing. So it's really interesting. So taking things back and claiming success. When someone is seriously depressed, if I say to you, right, you need to go to work, it's just such an effort. Whereas if, like, can you sit up? What's better for you as a human being? Yeah, I can in bed. I'm sitting up. Well done, you just achieved something. That's not condescending. You just fucking achieved something. Some people don't get out of bed. Well done. Can you swing your legs around? What's best for you? You can always go back to bed. If you count all the little things, how many jobs does it take you? Who here thinks making your bed is a success? Yeah, I do. Who thinks having a shower is a success? Eating food, getting up, facing the day, managing to go to work, they're all successes. I've got this thing where I talk about a lot, you need to count your feathers as much as your bricks. So it goes back to that thing of what weighs more, a ton of feathers or a ton of bricks? It's a trick question, right? Because it's a ton of each. Now I know that some of you don't work with tons, and you can't imagine them. But to see a ton of bricks, you can imagine that it's on a pallet, it's this much. A brick is easy to pick up. I mean, in that it's a little bit heavy, but it's really obvious it doesn't go anywhere. You can put it in your bag, it's really handy. You can smack someone else on the head with it and you can hurt yourself with it. It's there, it's constant. Your brain is hardwired to pick up negativity. We look for negativity in order to survive. We don't look for positives. And a positive is like a feather. It's small, it's tiny, it's much more difficult. You've got to pick it up. I mean, how many warehouses full of vacuum packed feathers would it be to make a ton? Or if you drop them off the building, would they just floof? Would they go down? Well, some would floof and some would go down because that's physics. Unless they were vacuum packed, they'd all go down. If they're both a ton, they still would probably kill someone. But your brain is hardwired to pick up negativity. The brick is easier. It's much
things to test next week.
I would like, no, don't try and kill anyone. I'm curious if you've got a warehouse, you could just think, how many feathers does it make? But your brain isn't hardwired. That's still very archaic. Our brains, our limbic system is very archaic. It's our older part of our brain. And our modern part of our brain is wrapped around it. This one is still a motherfucker. It's as smooth as anything in the way it works.
So what I'm hearing is don't pick up negativity, pick up a brick.
No, what I'm saying is look for the feathers. And I'll tell you how much I believe that, because I think
400 cubic meters.
have you worked it out?
Specialised knowledge here. I like to find them.
So like, I've got like feathers here and I've got feathers in my home, it really means a lot to me is to look for the positive. Like when you wake up in the morning, if you say to yourself, oh, fucking hell, it's raining and I'm really cold and I've got to get up to work and I'm really fucking tired and I don't want to do it, you are not setting your day up well. You're not setting up experiences well. If you look, oh, it wasn't a bad night's sleep, I did quite well. I didn't have the best night's sleep last night, but I was really proud of myself. I realised that if I've got 3 dogs, and if I move that particular block to there, they bark less because they're not in the hall listening to the foxes. Because my house has fucking got a shit ton of foxes around it, and my dog's going, "There's a fox!" really loudly. Most nights, because they want to protect me. I get it. Shut up. And my daughter and her girlfriend are really struggling to sleep because they're like, "I'm not used to this. It's fucking there at uni." So but they've been down for the last week. So I was like, really saying to myself, you have to say well done for the tiniest of things. I bet you don't enough on average. It's really important to do, to say. You'll say it to somebody else, like, I don't know about you, I'm picking you because of your job now, in the nicest of ways, but you're probably working with someone saying, oh my God, well done, you held a boundary, that was consent, you did so brilliantly, and you've done that today, look at what you've achieved. But are you really good at that on yourself? Well, certainly not as good often. You know, it's already good for me to say you need to do this. I'm not fucking doing it, that would help me. We do that, don't we, as humans, quite a lot. But so picking up the feathers is really important. They're not as impactful, but they really matter. Our phones and everything else as well, the shit that we hear and see about Prince fucking Harry or Meghan or...
It's quite orange. Sorry.
That was non-consensual. So I remember I go to Egypt quite a lot because that's where I like to just disappear on holiday. I'm very privileged. I've been away a lot. I've seen a lot of the world. I just want to go somewhere where I can lie on the beach, read a book, swim, and do nothing nowadays. That's my absolute switch off. I fucking love it. So I pop to Egypt a lot. But my second eldest daughter, the one who owns the gym, and her partner is, oh, you shouldn't go to Egypt. Why shouldn't I go to Egypt? There are stabbings. I'm in London. Are you fucking? It's really interesting the shit that we believe and the shit we read. Like I went to Tunisia quite a lot. Oh, there were 13 shots on a beach, remember?
Yeah.
What year are we talking about? Should I be worried about going to Manchester in case I go to a concert? There was a bomb that went off there. Like, come on, we have to look at everything and look at statistics. When you say, I live in a place called Lancing, and it's not particularly salubrious. I moved out of a place called Henfield, right, which is just, so lovely. And this woman, who was also a therapist, and she was like, oh, I can't believe I'm moving to Lancing. Well, I said, actually, I'm getting double my money. I'm getting this really big house, lots of space for my kids, and I've got this and I've got that. I'm trying to keep a like for like, and I think that's way more positive for them than mental health and for everything else that we're going through. And there's a station there, and the beach is right there. It's a 3-minute walk. I think it's a great place to be. I know, but it's not very nice, is it? My sister lives there. Fucking hell, you pretentious cunt. I love Lancing. It's great. It's great for me, and it's worked for me, and I love it. It's really interesting the things that we put, and we do the same with kink. That takes back to the original, that question in the first place. Your perception isn't reality, it's your reality, but it ain't fact. Your idea of what you think is right is your idea. And then we get the difference between ethics and morals and law. And it's all a bit of a fucking mess, isn't it? And that really matters.
Yeah, I felt like shit in 2 days after what happened.
I bet.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to make the right decisions for ourselves that we can live with, that we feel good about, and try and work with ourselves as much as anything. No one's going to rescue you. I've got a client at the moment who's not particularly well. So one of the angles I was sort of saying is, should we look at your nutrition? Because this is for a very specific reason, and your water intake. No, I just want the surgery. Okay. And I think you should get the surgery. I'm not going to go into details because it's very specific to this person. By the way, if I talk about any of my clients, I have full consent. I ask for their permission. I do not just share clients' details without having full consent. So some clients I don't say anything about, some I do. So please be aware that there's a huge difference. And it's really hard because if she did drink a lot of water and she did change, it would change this injury that she's got massively internally. It would make such a difference, but she wants the world to change it for her. And it won't. We have to make those changes. Anyway, so we're at the end. Thank you very much. If you want a certificate, let me know.